guys, I'm finally back with the chapters that I read during the live stream that I promised to record. Also, if you did skip it or if you wanted to listen to the beginning part of chapter 9 is back, I know I'm gonna be more careful about that now that it happened once. I'll try not to make it happen again. But yeah, I have chapter 13 here. Again, sorry for the long late wait if you didn't listen to the beginning of chapter 9 that was just recorded and posted. Basically my grandma just didn't really get better and I had to take a little break. But I'm back now, so Mastermind Rise of Anarchy, written by Clouds. My head in the clouds, not coming down. Read by Green Amateur. Chapter 13. Roles. Summary. Villain fights are still happening even in this new world. Katsuki grinned as the wind whipped the smoke around him. The worthless thug at his feet hadn't even seen him coming before Katsuki was launching an explosion at his head. He hadn't even stood a chance against King Explosion Murder, and people were saying that Deku, of all people, was dangerous? It was ridiculous. It was getting late, and Katsuki rubbed his eyes tiredly, grimacing as he realized that he had just rubbed the salt of ash all over his face. And that had been happening a lot recently. Most of the time, his explosions didn't produce too much of a mess of their own, but whenever they did, and Katsuki had been destroying a lot recently, and he didn't always remember when he'd gotten too close to Self, his hands covered in the stuff. Whatever, he just had to shower when he got to the dorms or something. No big deal. He was just about to head back when he heard someone yell behind him, "Stop! Villain!" Katsuki smirked and flexed his fingers. Another one? It was his lucky day. However, confused, when he looked around for a threat, the only other person he could see was Death Arms, who was staring right at him. "You shouldn't get a guy's hopes up like that," Katsuki growls. "I was looking forward to having someone to beat up. Figured you'd just be some meathead crying wolf." "Halt!" Death Arms lowered himself into a fighting stance. "I'm taking you in, villain. Do not resist." Katsuki looked at him like he'd grown 2 heads. "Wait, you're talking to me?" "I don't see any other villains here," Death Arms bit out, "except perhaps that poor man you almost killed." Katsuki rolled his eyes and kicked the already downed villain. "Don't be an idiot. This asshole will be fine. More importantly, who are you calling a villain? I'm a hero like you are!" Death Arm's eyes narrowed. Excessive force counts as villainy, especially in a half-baked vigilante like yourself, who could never gotten a license. "What did you say?" Katsuki snarled, launching himself forward before he could think of it. "I'm a fucking hero, not some goddamn villain. Got it? I'm better than all of you!" He didn't even get a chance to let off an explosion before Death Arms swatted him aside like a fly. He went flying down the side of the street through a window. The crash echoed as Katsuki hissed and took a stock of damage. He had more cuts than he could count, including a few on his hands that would make explosions painful. He was pretty sure he'd sprained his wrist and at least one of his ankles. He could hear Death Arms pounding down the street after him, and he swore as he ran. However, heroes weren't supposed to run, but heroes also weren't supposed to chase other heroes either. Aizawa had said making retreats was alright when someone was too injured to continue the fight. So it wasn't like he was running away because he was afraid of losing. He just needed to recover, regroup, and then he'd make Death Arms regret ever insulting him. He managed to slip away, partially because Death Arms was too bulky to chase him without giving away his location. Katsuki let his rage distract him from the pain as he made his way back to the dorms and patched himself up. He was a hero, or maybe a vigilante. He had proved to the stupid hero that there was no way in hell he was a villain. The cliff looked far less intimidating in the light of day, but Mandalay still couldn't stop the memory that supposed itself over the peaceful scene like a storm cloud. The memory of the same cliff covered in red mud instead of dust combined with the slow realization that it hadn't rained. She felt Ragdoll's hand on her like an anchor and took a deep breath. What were you looking for anyway? Mostly another clue, Tiger said. Whoever left us these notes had no way of knowing how long it'd take for us to put them all together, so it'd have been impractical of them to wait here for us. We'll probably find some sort of invitation? Pixie Bob spat. Are we sure we even want to figure this out? Whoever left these notes is probably not a hero. You're the one who suggested putting them together, Natalie snapped. I was curious, Pixie Bob whined. Yes, well, you have to admit that you still are, Ragdoll pointed out. These notes made a lot of promises, Tiger finished. If you ladies want to leave now, we can. Or we can follow and figure out the mystery writers actually follow through on those. Either way, we should do it as a team. Mandalay shook her head, trying to clear the memories like an etch-a-sketch. It didn't work, but then again, she hadn't really expected it to. Let's just keep going. We find them, we don't have to listen. We can arrest them on spot if we want to. Her teammates nodded in agreement as they spread out, looking for anything that didn't belong. She would look for anything that was different or had changed, but she hadn't been back there since Coda died, so she probably wasn't the best judge of that. She wanted to find the clue and get out of here already. This entire time, the place made her skin crawl. I found something! Ragdoll cried out, her voice echoing as she ran out of the cave. It's a map of Tokyo. Any clue of where we're supposed to go? Mandalay asked. Or what we're supposed to do when we get there? Pixie Bob added. Well, there's a star. Ragdoll pointed to the map. But it was in this tube I found as well. Seriously? Is that a glow stick? Pixie Bob laughed. They gave us a cryptic note and a glow stick. I can see some writing on that side, which means it's not the glow stick itself that's important. Tiger came up and took it from Ragdoll. What it's represented. He tilted it so that they could clearly see the writing. Promises? Ragdoll asked. What's that supposed to mean? Isn't it obvious? Mandalay felt slightly nauseous. Glow sticks are meant to be broken. Sue was concerned about Ochako. It had taken a full week and Mina's intervention to get her to even agree to come out this afternoon instead of training, but she still wasn't off duty. Even as they sipped their boba tea, Ochako's eyes swept the room in a clear display of hypervigilancy, and her body looked calm, but Sue knew her well enough to read the tension. She was waiting. She was expecting a villain to pop up out any moment. And there was no way that Ochako would let herself be caught off guard. Not again. Sue let a small croak. Maybe going off campus hadn't been the best plan, but it was the first thing she had thought of to keep Ochako from burning out. Whenever she was at UA, she was training, and even then, when they were just hanging out in the dorms, she always had weights and other tools stashed everywhere, or she would float the couch during movie nights as extra practice. It was exhausting to watch, and Sue couldn't imagine how Ochako was still standing. But there's nothing she could do. Not really. Ochako wouldn't admit anything was wrong when Sue had suggested she visit Hound Dog just to be safe. She'd simply laughed and assured her that everything was fine, and all Sue could do was be there and stand by Ochako so she wasn't alone. It made her feel almost helpless. But what else was she supposed to do when her best friend wouldn't let them help her? Did you see what Sarah did to Kaminari's room yesterday? Sue finally broke the silence. I heard Mina had to use her acid to cut through all the tape. It's good quirk practice, I guess, Ochako shrugged. But it doesn't seem like heroes should be using their quirks for pranks like that. You've been hanging around Ida too much, Sue croaked. They're just having a little fun. It's not hurting anyone. I guess. Ochako said hesitantly, sipping at her tea before suddenly stopping. Did you hear that? Sue tilted her head slightly and listened intently. It was barely audible, especially underneath the chatter of other patrons at the boba shop. But as she focused on the sound, it seemed to get closer. Her heart sank. Of course the noise had to be sirens, as if Ochako needed more proof that villains could attack at any time. We're in the middle of the city, Sue pointed out, uselessly. It could be an ambulance. Maybe someone had a heart attack. Ochako shook her head. Ambulance sirens are different. Those are police. Let's go. She leapt and tossed her boba in the trash out the door, despite the fact she had only drunk a quarter of it. Sue sighed as she followed in suit and ran down the street after Ochako. The sirens were much louder now, so they were definitely heading their way, and quickly. They weren't even halfway down the street when a car skidded around the corner, and they could barely see someone in the car with a light-based quirk shooting at something out of the rear windows. High-speed chase, Ochako muttered. Come on, they can't go anywhere if their wheels aren't touching the ground. It's basic physics. Sue's eyes widened. It's also basic common sense not to go chasing after a moving car. Ochako didn't seem to listen. She even if she wasn't in a hero costume, but she ran straight towards the car anyway, basically standing in its path as she stared it down. The car honked, but didn't stop moving. Sue shot out her tongue to grab her away, but at the last moment, Ochako reached out and waved her hands upwards as she activated her quirk. Sirens were the only sound on the street as the car launched up over Ochako's head. She watched it arc as the soreness out of her arms. Sue snapped out of her shock and lassoed a few civilians out of the way to give the car a place to land. Ochako glared at the villains even as she brought her hands together. Release! The car fell to the ground with a crash, and the two of them rushed towards the car, easily apprehending the disoriented villains as they crawled away from the wreckage. The police had shown up almost immediately and took over so they could put the villains in handcuffs to get them to the station. Sue stood silently beside Ochako, who refused to relax as she watched the police lead them away. Instead, she flexed her hands and looked hard at the villains. She didn't even look satisfied at a job well done, just determined to keep going and beat every villain in Japan. The crowd was eating it up. Miss! Miss! A reporter called out, a camera lens appearing in his hand to pick a few pictures. Would you mind to answer a few questions? I assure you that your hero name won't be mentioned in the article, if that's a concern. What gave you the courage to stand in front of a moving car like that? Ochako turned towards the reporter, her face hardened in determination as she answered. The people of Japan deserve to be safe, don't they? Estella will kill us if we give them a full interview, Sue muttered as she grabbed Ochako's arm. Come on, we gotta get back to school. Thankfully, Ochako let herself get dragged along, but Sue didn't miss the way people looked at them, hopefully, even after they disappeared down the side of a street. If Japan was looking for a symbol of hope, she had the sinking feeling that they had just found one. Okay, I'm so glad I'm back. I guess reading that really makes some stress. Yeah, there's the fixed version. Not hopefully as much stuttering. Although it probably took me just as long to record as the live one did. I don't know, maybe it's just because I read it before. Anyways, also, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's up with my Bakugo voice, if you will, today. It's my grandpa is also staying for a while. So he's in the other room. That's why I tried to cuss quiet. I know, I just didn't want him to seem like I was like a not good kid, you know. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good day. I will get on to, I think, chapter 14, if I'm correct. I know I'm losing memory. A lot going on, guys. Anyways, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you in the next chapter.